one has to kill the other. And so what's happening right now is all of the value, all of the early value, just like early internet. If you were in the internet, and it was a new protocol that was changing everything. The value would be captured by the people that are building on the new protocol.
Yep.
And so that's what, but in this way, it doesn't get captured, because if you capture value and somebody else sees the margin go up and you're making a ton of money from that, then they will compete with you and prices keep falling for everyone else, because in the free market, prices continue to fall forever because we have to provide more value. It's a perfect expression of providing more value. And if you measure Bitcoin against that, you'll see a perfect reality unfolding. The first global free market that's ever existed.
Bitcoin's price action has once again become the center of financial headlines as investors weigh its future in a rapidly shifting global economy. After years of being dismissed as a speculative asset, Bitcoin is now drawing serious attention from institutional investors, corporations, and even central banks who can no longer ignore its growing influence. The narrative is no longer just about retail traders chasing rallies. It is about the rise of Bitcoin as a parallel financial system that functions outside the constraints of traditional monetary policy. With markets facing uncertainty from inflation, slowing growth, and increasing geopolitical risks, Bitcoin is gaining traction as a hedge against systemic fragility, a digital alternative to gold in an era where trust in fiat currencies continues to erode. The momentum behind Bitcoin has been reinforced by a series of catalysts. Spot Bitcoin ETFs have opened the floodgates for institutional participation, giving pension funds, hedge funds, and wealth managers an easy pathway to gain exposure. On the corporate side, firms adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets have demonstrated how the asset can outperform conventional holdings, with some seeing dramatic gains compared to traditional stock indexes. This wave of adoption has provided a structural tailwind for Bitcoin's price, creating demand that is fundamentally different from the retail-driven booms of past cycles. The entry of regulated financial products and professional investors has transformed Bitcoin into an asset class that is increasingly difficult to dismiss. At the same time, macroeconomic forces are amplifying Bitcoin's appeal. Rising global debt levels, continued reliance on quantitative easing, and debates over soft versus hard landings in the U.S. economy have put traditional assets under pressure. Bond markets are flashing warning signs, equities appear stretched, and fiat currencies are increasingly vulnerable to inflationary or deflationary shocks. Against this backdrop, Bitcoin offers a decentralized store of value that cannot be devalued by political decisions or central bank experiments. Investors who once relied solely on gold as a safeguard are now diversifying into Bitcoin, pushing it further into the mainstream financial conversation. Before we dive into JeffBooth's sharp insights from his latest interview, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tap the bell icon so you never miss a moment when truth meets the market. Let's get into it.
Everything we just discussed, right? It's really hard to change people's incentives inside that system. Because what ends up happening, just from game theory, it's just prisoner's dilemma. If you looked at it, people are so worried about somebody else cheating them, they'll cheat first.
Right.
So if you have an unstable system based on that, you can expect humanity, your own role in it, to be able to just keep doing it and put your head in the sand and then the whole thing gets worse and you blame other people when it's actually you.
Right. Okay.
Now but before we go there, now let's say what Bitcoin did. It's an open, decentralized, secure protocol bounded by energy. And if it stays decentralized and secure, which I'm pretty sure it will, why am I pretty sure it will? Because it's the nodes, the consensus mechanism, and tens of thousands of nodes who know this problem now and are defending this network. And so it's very, very hard to cheat. And as more people know this network, it provides a base level for humanity that is a different structure. And what would you ask? What is it doing to the other control structure? It's completely repricing and not just repricing, but changing the entire lens of society. And it's just very early. So if you think you're making 8% a year, inside that other system, and the money supply is rising by 8% a year, and you're actually just losing money. In Bitcoin versus that other system, the IRR is 45%.
Right.
Then you're being repriced whether you know it or not. And so that base level, that honest level, that essentially truth, that objective reality, or ask a different question. If the natural state of the free market was deflation, which it clearly is, and now you had a protocol bounded by energy that you couldn't cheat, what would you expect to see? You would expect to see falling prices forever from the honest protocol. And then now what do we see? We see exactly that. My house was 300 Bitcoin 5 years ago. Now it's 11 Bitcoin. It'll continue. My energy prices look the same. It's perfectly describing objective reality. Well, most people are measuring it from a perspective reality.
But it seems like I would imagine people are trying to, the powers that be, the people at the top of the current money structure, would like to make most of the world as unfriendly to Bitcoin as possible. So you could sort of win the fight on the internet, but we're still going to need to consider the jurisdictional fight that needs to happen because we live in the real world. We live in a physical world. So does that worry you at all? Like, do you think it'll be a game of whack-a-mole where another country always pops up and says, "Oh, okay, there we go."
Yeah, and again, I think I explained this in a different way. The free market, what built the U.S. in the beginning was individual rights and freedoms. People moved from Europe where they couldn't thrive to make use of their minds to create tons of value that created the U.S. empire because of the individual rights and freedoms. If the U.S. wants to suppress that, or China wants to suppress that, or India wants to suppress that, there will always be somewhere else that will allow that to happen, and they'll benefit from it. So I'm not saying that this won't be chaotic on the way through, because most people don't understand this, but every time you naturally say those people are stopping me, or talking about those people from that system, you're making that system stronger. And you can just tune the whole thing out and spend time building in the free market and making that stronger. You can just move your time. I say this often, but people are inside a jail cell yelling at the captor from inside the jail cell while the door is open. Well, the door is open, and they could just take all of that energy that they're yelling with and move it into something that cannot be stopped.
Yep.
And that energy, that feeling of moving your energy, it doesn't mean that this isn't still happening.
Right.
It doesn't mean that most people are still caught in the jail cell.
Right.
Is the thing that they're seeing in the free market shine back at them.
Yeah.
But by the way, why would that make sense? Because free market values impact on other people. It makes perfect sense.
Could you unravel that a bit more? Or what can I say? Could you explain that a bit more?
The only way to get paid in the free market is to provide more value to somebody else. So if you had this massive change in something that has never existed before, that was an expression of the free market, but most people didn't know, if you really knew, and you knew how to connect to those people in all different ways, creating businesses that protected them from what's coming, creating educational content to help those people, the more people you helped, the better you would do. Because the free market, you cannot get paid in the true free market without competing to provide value with the entire world. So if you're competing to provide value, you have to be really good at your craft, because you could compete and now that is exactly what's happening. You have this new protocol that's largely so misunderstood. It's so misunderstood even by a bunch of Bitcoiners who think they understand it because it's so new, right? And what people are doing is they're integrating a former reality, trying to make those work together.
Right.
And they can't, right? So if the free market, the natural state of the free market is deflation, that cannot coexist with an inflationary monetary system.
Author and technologist JeffBooth has been one of the strongest voices arguing that Bitcoin is not just another asset class, but a necessary response to a world drowning in debt and artificial growth. Booth highlights how technological deflation, combined with the relentless expansion of fiat money, creates a fragile system destined for breakdown. In his view, Bitcoin's limited supply and decentralized nature provide the only credible escape route from this cycle. His perspective adds weight to the idea that Bitcoin's long-term price appreciation is less about speculation and more about inevitable economic restructuring as society seeks stability in a digital age. Looking ahead, the biggest question is not whether Bitcoin will rise in price, but how the world will adjust to its presence. If adoption continues to accelerate among corporations, governments, and retail investors alike, Bitcoin could fundamentally reshape how money is perceived and stored. Its limited supply stands in stark contrast to the unlimited expansion of fiat currencies, setting the stage for what many view as a generational revaluation. Whether it becomes digital gold, a parallel settlement layer for global trade, or the foundation of a new financial system, Bitcoin's journey is forcing markets, policymakers, and individuals to rethink the very nature of money. And the price action may only be reflecting the early stages of that transformation.
Now we have to say, what's the proof of work that that is true? Is it true? And does he change one day or not? But I got a real sense that he means it.
Okay. I say this a lot also to address the IMF thing. I think people also don't realize that, aside from promoting Bitcoin in El Salvador, he also has to make sure we still live largely within a current system. He has to make sure that people in El Salvador, that there aren't defaults on current loans and things like this. The IMF situation, I would say, is unfortunate. It's an unfortunate reality, but it's a reality that all leaders in Latin America and different parts of the world deal with. I think looking at it from afar, I would imagine, I'll give him credit to say it seemed like he dealt with it the best way he could. And I think it's just a difficult sort of situation. But in terms of credibility around Bitcoin, yeah, it didn't seem like they have wavered at all. I've been in touch with Stacy, people like John from Premier Bitcoin. And there are still efforts happening on the ground. And I think that's the most important thing, that the people are still being educated. But I think your last point is really important. I have some family members that have done a lot of work in Latin America, really good work, humanitarian work. And they genuinely can't stand them. They're very quick to call him a dictator, as you just said. But the ironic part there is that most dictators around the world do not like, well, I'll just call it freedom money, do not like the fact that they're empowering their people to use a certain currency. Why do you think that this isn't more broadly brought up? I think that's one of the biggest points you just made. It's one of the biggest things to sort of pay attention to. And you've also spoken, I think, in the past about, most people think they live in a democracy, but if they don't have control over their money, or they don't know what monetary policy is, they don't technically live in a democracy. For us, look how many people pay attention to every single word that Jerome Powell spoke about an hour and a half.
Crazy.
Right.
Crazy.
So, I mean, on a certain level, when you think about this stuff, what is democracy? What are these forms of government? Similar to the fact that you spoke earlier about the fact that we've actually never lived in a free market system, and that capitalism and free market are two different things, especially the quote unquote capitalism that has existed since 1971, fiat capitalism.
Crony capitalism,
right? When it comes to this sort of messaging, you're pushing back against a lot of things that people sort of consider normal, their normal framework for thinking about things. So, I mean, it's similar to the earlier questions I asked. It's again, sort of, how do you transmit this information? And I get it. You do it authentically. You do it heart to heart. But I think it's a matter of, I guess, in my mind, I'm thinking through it. It's just like, it's constantly sort of addressing the fact that people's frameworks are maybe
skewed.
I think that's a kind way to put it. Yeah.
We don't have a word to describe what I'm. So when people are saying left or right, or capitalism or socialism, they're referring to frameworks on top of broken money.
Right.
That we don't have a word to understand. So it's so natural to get divided by that same thing and think that you're the winner and my system is better. Now you're not arguing about truth. You're arguing my team is better than the other team because our broken money will spend it differently than your broken money.
Right.
And it's ludicrous, but people can't see themselves in that argument
Yeah.
because they're so caught in the fight that they think it's somebody else, the socialists or the capitalists or but if it's broken money, it's all the same fight.
The future of Bitcoin appears to be entering a transformative era, one that could redefine how global markets perceive money, value, and security. As the flaws of the current financial system become more evident, rising sovereign debt, weakening fiat currencies, and the inability of central banks to control long-term inflation, Bitcoin stands out as an asset built on scarcity and decentralization. Its capped supply of 21 million coins makes it uniquely resistant to the dilution that plagues paper currencies, and this structural difference could push investors, corporations, and even governments to see Bitcoin not just as an alternative, but as a necessity. Each wave of adoption, whether through ETFs, corporate balance sheets, or nation-states experimenting with Bitcoin reserves, adds new layers of legitimacy that strengthen its long-term price outlook. If the pace of institutional adoption continues, Bitcoin could see an accelerated climb toward $200,000 in the near term, as inflows from hedge funds, pensions, and sovereign wealth funds create demand far exceeding available supply. In this environment, the halving cycles that have historically dictated Bitcoin surges may align with growing global distrust in fiat, magnifying the effect of each reduction in issuance. The path to $500,000 or even $1 million per coin within the next decade is not simply speculation, but a reflection of the mismatch between a fixed-supply digital asset and a world drowning in unlimited paper money. Every major currency debasement in history has driven capital into harder assets, gold in the past, and now, increasingly, Bitcoin. Drop your thoughts on experts' analysis in the comment section below. If you find this video informative, don't forget to support our channel and turn on notifications to stay informed about our latest videos.